Before we begin, I want to let everyone know here that we are recording today's session. We post archived Client Enrichment Series videos on our YouTube channel. You can access more than 40 past sessions in a wide variety of subjects, anytime, day or night. There is a link to our YouTube channel at the end of today's slide deck, and my Client Enrichment Series team will post that link in the chat pane for you. Before we get into the material for today's presentation, just a couple of housekeeping instructions. We have automatically muted your audio to help us control the sound quality of today's presentation. If you are new to using Zoom, we have found the Zoom for Government platform to be pretty intuitive and user-friendly. You can customize your view of the different pods as you see fit. Speaking of that, you will also see that we have a chat pod as well as a question and answer pod. For this session, please use the chat pod for any administrative or logistical questions that you have, or to report any issues that you are experiencing. One of our Client Enrichment Series team members will then assist you. We ask that any questions that you have relevant to today's material be posted in the question and answer pod. Our subject matter experts will be able to see your queries there, and I'll queue them up for our presenter to address later in the program. All questions will be responded to in a formal question and answer document that we'll post to our website about 2 weeks after the presentation. For the folks who are participating by telephone and following along with the slide deck, you too can participate in the question and answers. Please email your questions and comments to us via the mailbox, Client Enrichment Series, all one word, at gsa.gov. And we'll make sure to add it to our question list. Closed captioning is also available for today's session. Instructions were sent out with the slide deck, and we'll post a link to that utility in the chat pod. Open that link and view the captions side by side with your Zoom screen. Next slide, please, Ms. Jane. There we are. Now I'd like to introduce you to our today's presenter, Jane Schuster. Jane is a superb workplace strategist in the GSA PBS Office of the Chief Architect. She joined the National Workplace Team in 2020, acting for a year as the Director for Workplace Strategy. Jane has served as the Regional Workplace Executive and a Client Executive in GSA's Region 6. She has assisted customers with strategic requirements development, project and space planning, workplace strategy, furniture procurement, budget, scheduling, and design. A true expert in all of these fields. She's implemented workplace initiatives, led national training, and overseen the application of workplace strategy for customers. She played an integral role in GSA's Workplace 2030, the future of the federal workplace study, focusing on the pandemic's long-term impact on workplaces and work styles. She's utilizing this study to establish a new set of GSA services that offer responsive and innovative workplace solutions. She holds a BS in interior design from Southern Illinois University, better known to all of us as the Salukis, and she is a National Council for Interior Design Qualification Certified Interior Designer. Now that is a mouthful. Without any further ado, please take it away, Jane.
Thank you so much, Dave. There's a lot of extra stuff in that intro that I hadn't expected. So I'm actually curious in the chat panel if there's any other fellow Salukis out there. I'd love to know who you are. So with that, I wanted to open our presentation and just let you know today I'm going to be talking through two different opportunities for the federal government for co-working. So I'm going to be comparing and contrasting both our Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ contract and our GSA FlexHub pilot. So the ultimate goal of coming out of the conversation is to be able to understand the difference between the two service offerings. So before getting into that, hopefully you'll agree that this is slightly fun. I just want to run through a quick pre-test to kind of test your knowledge. I do not need you to put in the chat anything about your answers, so you can just either write them down in front of you, know your answer in your head. But again, we don't need to actually know your answer. We're not going to be polling you, but just want to know kind of your baseline knowledge of both our Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ and our GSA FlexHub. Now, I definitely understand probably the baseline knowledge for most of you is pretty low. And so that's great. So glad that you're joining us today to hear about both of these. So I'm going to go through 4 different things and ask you whether this is describing the Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ contract or our GSA FlexHub. So the first one is, if we're talking about co-working in federal space, is that describing our Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ or our GSA FlexHub? The keyword there is co-working in federal space. So again, just write down in front of you or know your answer in your head. It's going to give you a couple seconds to think about that. All right, so if we talk about co-working in federal space, and you said, gosh, that is describing our GSA FlexHub, you would be correct. So our FlexHub is federal. Comparing it and contrasting it to our Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ, which is co-working in private sector co-working space. Next, if we're talking about which of these are available today, ready to go right now, which of those? Is that Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ? Is that the FlexHub? Or perhaps is that both? Available today. All right, if you said Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ, you would be correct. So our FlexHub concept is in pilot stages. It has not yet rolled out. It's coming soon, but what is available today is our Coworking Services IDIQ. So 2 more. If you were putting a task order in place through a GSA contracting officer, which of these services would you be using? Would you be using our Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ contract, or would you be going through our FlexHub? Task orders through a GSA contracting officer. All right, again, if you said Flexible Coworking Services would be putting a task order in place, you would be correct. And the last one, just humor me one more second here. So if we're talking about space as a service, which does that describe? IDIQ contract, our FlexHub pilot, or perhaps does that describe both? Space as a service. All right, if you said that describes both, you are correct. So again, thanks for humoring me. Hopefully you did not get them all right, so you'll stick around with us and learn a lot more. If you did get them all right, I hope you again stick around with us because I'm sure you're going to learn a little bit more about each of these. So with that, I want to just jump right in. And first off, before focusing on our Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ, I want to level set and talk a little bit about what co-working truly is. And so to make sure that as we're talking about this, that we're all on the same page. So what is co-working? It's a style of work where people from different agencies or different organizations who don't typically work together are working in the same open environment. They're working alongside of each other, but not necessarily with each other. And co-working emerged in the early 2000s it emerged as this opportunity for people who were entrepreneurs, maybe a startup company that wanted a professional office environment to report to be around other people, be in a vibrant space, and have that ability to make connections with others that they wouldn't typically see or meet. And also it was an opportunity for these startups to have a really professional mailing address or a place that they could meet with others. So co-working, again, it's the space where people who typically don't work together are working in the same environment. So again, because co-working emerged in the early 2000s, now we flash forward to 2021, and only now is co-working really starting to emerge as an opportunity for the federal government. So that takes us to where we are right now with a new contract that we've just awarded, Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ. This contract is intended to provide that temporary space for federal agencies needing short-term co-working space at a really cost-effective solution. So something that's really important that I want you to take away from today's conversation, if you hear nothing else, please do hear that this is a service contract, not a lease contract. So the difference here means that if we're talking about a lease, typically we're talking about one agency occupying space all by themselves, exclusive use of that space, maybe having the ability to reconfigure that space and change it up. Additionally, we're talking typically about longer terms, over a year for sure. As we talk about this contract being a service contract, what we want to stress here is we're talking about short terms up to 12 months. We're talking about not being able to configure the space. This is truly off-the-shelf workspace that's provided by a private sector co-working vendor. However, I don't expect you to be able to necessarily keep the difference for each of these co-working spaces aligned. So I will say, working with GSA, what we can do is make sure that your requirements are aligning with that service contract side rather than swaying over to a lease. So we'll work very closely with you to make sure that we're staying on the right side of that line. As I mentioned, this contract has been awarded and it's available now. It's available for all federal agencies within the government, so executive, judicial, and legislative branches. And it's available across the continental US. This contract is providing that commercially available off-the-shelf co-working space, and it's provided by private sector co-working vendors. So we've awarded to 5 different vendors, and later in the presentation, I'll talk about who those vendors are and what they can provide. But I wanted you to know for sure that this is private sector provided spaces. This is not provided by GSA. These are private sector co-working vendors. And they're offering typically open office concept spaces. And again, thinking about what that concept of co-working truly is, it's sharing an open office space with others. So other companies, potentially other agencies would be sharing that same space. And again, thinking about keeping this on that service contract side rather than that lease means that agencies don't have exclusive use of any one particular space. So if a co-working vendor offers 50 workstations in their site and your agency needs 50 workstations, that's great. We can provide 50 workstations for you under this contract. However, that same co-working vendor might determine, gosh, the government has used up all of my co-working space, so I need to expand my offering. And so on day one, if your agency is using all of the co-working sites, 2 weeks down the road or 3 weeks down the road, that vendor might have expanded. And so just wanted to be very open and upfront about this, that agency or that co-working vendor does have the ability to offer additional space and potentially share that, you would be sharing that space with other private sector companies. These spaces are fully furnished and they include wireless internet. And so I'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But in terms of internet, wanted to say that each agency would be logging in and coming to the space with their own laptops and cell phones and whatever hardware they need to be able to successfully connect to an agency VPN to securely access agency networks. So thinking a little bit about that short-term capability of our services, IDIQ contract, it's intended to provide space for up to 12 months. So we would work with you, our contracting officer at GSA, to put a task order in place for up to 12 months. Because this is a service contract, we will require annual funding, and that will come in the form of a reimbursable work authorization to GSA through the eRETA system. This contract offers great flexibility of your terms. So if you need the space 5 days a week, or if you need it 5 times a month, or if you need it 4 times a year, we have a lot of flexibility built into this contract for you. Additionally, if you get into the space and just absolutely realize this is not working for your agency, we do offer standard termination rights should we need to exercise those. So you're probably starting to think about when this contract might be appropriate for your agency. So I wanted to throw out just a couple of different examples to start your thoughts on where that might be appropriate for your own agency. So thinking about short-term hiring surges. So for example, maybe your agency is starting a new branch or division, you've got a ramping up of hiring, and you quickly need to get people working in a physical space. So we could offer for up to 12 months a short-term solution for that hiring surge, while GSA works with you to get your long-term leased or federal location in place. Additionally, thinking about use of this contract for an opportunity for swing space. So maybe your agency is undergoing some construction, and while your long-term space is being re-outfitted or configured, you might need space for your employees to touch down as needed. And so swing space under this contract might be an appropriate solution for you. A couple of things about swing space, though, I do want to be upfront about is under this contract, the vendors are not able to store any sort of furniture or files or storage items for you. You would need to contract outside of this contract for warehousing of your swing space items as your space is being constructed. Additionally, so many agencies now throughout the pandemic have found that telework is very successful for them. And if your agency is one of those that finds that telework does truly work as that solution, you actually might not need swing space at all. If your space is being constructed, you may be able to assign these people to their home telework site permanently or temporarily during that swing space need. So not trying to talk you out of the contract by any means, but just saying we're always looking for the most cost-effective solution for the taxpayer and for the federal government. So if we actually don't need to even put a contract in place and we could do telework as that interim solution, that's where we'll look first too. So all of that being said, GSA can work with you to determine whether flexible co-working services is the right solution for you, or if there is another solution that we need to offer. So what we want to do is understand the problem that we're trying to solve, and we will come to the table with the best solution for you. Additionally, we always want to make sure that we're observing and looking for vacant leased and vacant federal space as that first solution instead of putting a contract in place. So any sort of vacant federal or leased space would have move-in qualities that would be comparable to what you would be needing or receiving through flexible co-working services. So first consideration by GSA will definitely go to vacant space. So I touched on earlier about the spaces being fully furnished. So what that really means is that co-working vendors are providing a fully furnished space with workstations and private office furniture. They're providing access for your agency to communal spaces and communal printers and copiers. I mentioned before about the wireless internet, so that's always going to be included under each of these co-working vendor sites. You'll have access to shared amenities, of course, access to restrooms. Most of the sites will offer open seating areas, but it's truly dependent from location to location on what the spaces offer. Additionally, that's dependent from location to location is access to spaces like huddle rooms and conference rooms, maybe phone booths. So this is definitely going to vary from location and also by vendor. So in terms of the private office furniture, one thing I do want to point out is while I have not seen lots and lots of co-working sites, what I am seeing consistently is that the private office furniture is not fully furnished case goods with a credenza and all sorts of storage. We're talking about a small room with 4 doors or 4 walls and a door. We're talking about a work surface and a chair. We're again not talking about fully furnished wood case goods. So basic furniture and basic workstations. Under this contract, each of our 5 co-working vendors offer unreserved workstations, reservable workstations, and reservable offices. So while they may offer access to huddle rooms and conference rooms, what we have required under the contract are those 3 workspace types. So unreserved workstations simply mean that as you're accessing a co-working site, you would come in, they would tell you to go and find any available unused workstation or unused workstation for the day. And that's where you would drop in, or they're sometimes also called hot desking. Reservable workstations and reservable offices work similarly to each other. So you would work with a vendor to reserve the workstation or the private office that you would need the next day or the next week, or depending on your need, whether you're in the space 5 days or 3 days a week, doesn't matter. We would work with that vendor to reserve a workstation or a private office. If you are not in the space consecutively on consecutive days, you definitely would be moving around the space unless that vendor is able to secure that same office for those kind of non-consecutive days. If you're in the office day after day, 5 days a week, it is very likely that that vendor would be able to reserve that office or that workstation for you, but also knowing that on a nightly basis, you will be walking away with the majority of your items, specifically if you're not coming back the next day. If you do plan to return to that exact same workspace the next day, and you intend to leave things, you do run the risk of knowing that you're leaving personal items at the workspace. And so that's really a risk at your agency's discretion. So again, talking a little bit about huddle rooms and conference rooms, we are offering under this contract just the 3 workspace types, but vendors may be able to offer huddle rooms and conference rooms. So if that's part of your request for co-working space, we would need to know that so we can write in your statement of work exactly what your desired use is, so that the vendors can look within their own inventory and offer the best solution to meet your need. If your agency is only needing use of conference rooms and not workstations, I will say that's not the intended use of our contract. So really what we're intending is that workstations and offices are the main use of this contract, and that conference rooms and huddles and other ancillary spaces and requests are incidental to the use of the workstations or offices. So Dave, I'm gonna pause here, take a drink of water, and let you run the next quiz.
Okay, great. And I'll go ahead and I'll read the question and the answers aloud, since some participants may not be able to see the poll. If you're in Zoom and you cannot see the poll, you can still respond with your answer in the chat pane. And the question: what is the maximum length of a single task order under this Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ contract? A, 6 months, B, 12 months, C, 2 years, and D, 5 years. Those answers again: A, 6 months, B, 12 months, C, 2 years, and D, 5 years. We'll give you just a moment to come up with your response. And Andrea, if you could let me know when we have a representative number of responses. All right, let's see. Okay, we have about 106 responses. 6 of those, 6 months, 90, 12 months, so people were listening. 4, 2 years, and 6, 5 years.
Awesome job, guys. Yep, you got it, 12 months. That is the maximum length of a single task order under this contract. So great job, thanks for listening. Thanks for participating in our poll. If you missed it, no worries whatsoever. Now you know 12 months. That's the maximum for our single task order. All right, just that one quiz for now. So I'll keep us moving. This is probably the question that you've all been dying to know. Who did we award this contract to? So we awarded to those 5 vendors that I've been alluding to. Of the 5, 4 of them are small businesses. And the only non-small business that we did award to is WeWork Commons. So of these 5 vendors, we've got 2 different vendor types. One is what we call an owner-operator. So the owner-operator firms or vendors are Novel, The Yard, and WeWork. Owner-operators are exactly what that sounds like. They own the space, they operate the space under their company name. So if you are in co-working space provided by one of our owner-operators, your space would very likely then be branded as WeWork, The Yard, or Novel. If you are in space provided by the other type of vendor, which we call an aggregator, your space, so the aggregators would be DeskPass and Liquid Space. And so aggregators are essentially able to tap into a large co-working network to offer co-working space in other co-working vendor space. So what I mean by that is if you're walking down the street and you see any sort of co-working vendor site that you're not recognizing the name, that co-working vendor site might be available under this contract through one of our aggregators. So under DeskPass or Liquid Space. So if you were awarded a task order to Liquid Space, for example, one of our aggregators, your space that you would be sitting in is very likely not going to be branded as Liquid Space. Conversely, it would be branded as some other co-working vendor site. So we've got aggregators who have access to the co-working market, that network, and then owner operators who own and operate their own space. Under this contract, we do need agencies to go through GSA to use the contract. So you're not able to go directly under the contract to any of these vendors. You do need to go through GSA. We'll put a task order in place from a GSA contracting officer, and we will be competing each of those task orders. I mentioned previously and just wanted to reiterate that task orders under this contract are funded via reimbursable work authorizations. So your agency would provide yearly funding. You would determine your funding source. And also in terms of the RWA fee, there is a GSA fee on that RWA. That fee is simply going to administrative costs to adhere and administer that contract to put that task order in place. So there's no additional GSA markups. It's simply that administrative fee plus that pass-through fee for the vendor space of contract. In terms of the timing on getting a task order in place, once we receive your RWA, we'll go through the RWA acceptance process. So from acceptance of that RWA, we will put that task order, we will compete that task order, we will award the task order and then get you in the space. And so that time between RWA acceptance and actually sitting in the space, we anticipate to be about 5 weeks. So from the back end, I just wanted to share a little bit about how we would work with you at GSA to begin putting a task order in place. So GSA has the responsibility of creating that statement of work or that scope of work. So we'll have conversations with you to understand your co-working need and first off, determine that this is the most appropriate solution for you. What we'll need in order to put that statement of work in place, which is very streamlined, is simply these 5 things that you see on the screen here. So we need to know the number of workspaces that you would be needing, whether that's offices or workstations. And we're needing to know on any given day. So what I'm getting at with that is maybe you have 20 people that are using co-working space or intend to use co-working space over the term of that task order. But of those 20 people, you actually only anticipate 5 people coming into the physical co-working site on any given day. So instead of paying for 20 individual workspaces, you would actually put in your scope of work that you would need 5 workspaces. So on any given day, you only anticipate 5 people needing the space. Additionally, we'll need to know the types of workspaces. So again, that's those 3 types that we offer under the contract. That's unreserved workstations, it's reservable workstations, and reservable private offices. Then we'll need to know the city or cities that you intend to use this space. And I'll talk a little bit about that here in just a couple minutes. Any sort of extra special agency requests. So under this contract, we offer the location, we offer the types of workspaces, those 3 that I've mentioned previously. But if your agency is needing access to a huddle room or a conference room on any sort of regular basis, what we'll want to do is note that in our scope of work. That way the vendor can look within their own vendor portfolio to determine the most appropriate location that they want to propose. So GSA will work with you to ensure that any extra agency requests do align with the requirements of this contract, ensuring that we're staying again on that service side of the line. And then finally, what we'll do behind the scenes is provide a vacant space certification or a vacant space check. That's something GSA will do. We'll look at our existing inventory for vacant federal or vacant leased space. So internal to GSA will sign off and determine if there is or is not vacant space that's readily available that may be more appropriate than this Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ contract. So that's truly all that goes into the scope. It's typically 1, maybe 2 pages at max. And the reason we can keep that most streamlined is because the full requirements for each of these vendors is already written into their individual contracts. So with each of those 5 vendors, we have approved pricing. And I will say it varies greatly by vendor. So when we're putting together an IGE, and that again is on the GSA responsibility list, that IGE will typically be based on that higher side of the market to make sure we're capturing the cost for all of our vendors. We will put together that IGE based on the information that we'll already have discussed with you during that statement of work or the scope of work development. So number of workspaces required. Again, if you've got 20 people, but only 5 are using it, we would put number of workspaces required would be 5. We need to know the city tier or the city location that you would be in. And when I'm talking about city tiers, we have 3 city tiers under the Census Bureau's metropolitan statistics information. So city tier 1 is the largest cities in the US. It's highly established markets. So Washington, DC, for example, Chicago, LA, New York, just to name a couple. So city tier 1 is those biggest cities across the country. City tier 2 is upcoming markets. So still mid-size and large cities. For example, Kansas City, Denver, St. Louis fall into city tier 2. And then city tier 3 picks up the rest of the cities and towns across the country. So each of our vendors have certified that they can offer co-working space in all of our city tiers. Again, under the IGE, we'll be looking to know your term of co-working needs, whether that is 1 month, 3 months, or up to 12 months. And also we need to know the frequency that you anticipate to use those workstations or private offices. So if you intend to use them 5 days a week, if you intend to use them a couple times a month or a couple times a year. So we'll need to write that into both the scope of work and our independent government estimate. Just to mention again, all task orders will be competed. And on a rotational basis, we'll be doing an RFQ for our small business as a set aside. So ensuring that we're meeting small business needs and goals. And of course, of those 5 vendors, again, 4 of them are small businesses. As we're looking at these task orders, we'll be looking at conformance to your requirements in the scope and also the lowest price to make sure we're getting the best price for the federal government. All right, Dave, I'm going to turn it back to you for our final quiz.
Okie dokie. Again, I'll read the question and the answers aloud. What is the funding source for task orders under this contract? A, government purchase cards. B, RWAs or reimbursable work authorizations. Or C, all of the above. And those answers again, and the question, what is the funding source for task orders under this contract? A, government purchase cards. B, RWAs. Or C, all the above. Give you just a moment to jot this one down, and we'll see what we come up with. All right, we have about 120 responses. I
can take that. So the correct answer is RWA. So unfortunately, we cannot accept government purchase cards under this contract. So we do need to request only RWAs. So not trying to trick you, but I do see this question coming up a lot. So I wanted to just call it out as a quiz. So the correct answer under this contract, task orders are funded via reimbursable work authorization. All right, so let me do just some really quick Cliff's notes on that last section before I move to our next section. So flexible co-working services, it is available now, awarded to 5 co-working vendors. We'll be putting in place task orders that will go through GSA. Task orders are funded via reimbursable work authorization. We offer 3 types of workspaces under this contract, and all co-working vendors across the country are providing fully furnished office space with wireless internet. And then lastly, I want to say flexible co-working services is private sector. So know if you're using FCS IDIQ, you may be sitting alongside of companies or other agencies. So that's the Cliff's Notes, kind of log that in the back of your head here. And I want to shift now and talk about a new service that's very closely related, and really I just wanted to compare and contrast our flexible co-working services with our upcoming, not yet available, but soon, GSA FlexHub pilot location. So to set the stage here on what this FlexHub is and why we created it, I just wanted to, for a second, talk about Workplace 2030, which you may have heard GSA speaking about this for the last year. It's an initiative that GSA is in charge of, where we're looking at what the future of the federal workplace looks like in the hopefully soon post-pandemic workplace. So understanding that agencies have learned new ways of working over nearly the last 2 years, there's things that agencies have learned that really will stick with us. And when I'm talking about that, a lot of the things that we hear, both from the federal government and from private sector, is that this hybrid environment is here for the long term. So we certainly recognize that some agencies have missions that need to be in the physical workplace day after day. We have other agencies or individuals within agencies that may have the ability to work on a fully remote basis, but everyone else may be in this kind of fluctuation or hybrid workplace, where some days of the pay period, they may be working from the office. Other days of the pay period, they may be working from home. So knowing that there's this more hybrid environment that's going to be long lasting, both private sector and in the government for the long term. So through our Workplace 2030 project, we had a series of discussions and conversations with various agencies across the federal government. And one of the things that really stuck out to us was that we heard agencies say that we're willing to share space. So we just finished talking about our Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ contract and wanted to share that what we're looking to do is create something similar, but in federal space. So creating what we're calling a GSA FlexHub to be able to offer federal co-working solutions within GSA managed space. So I just have a little bit of information to share on this. It's unfortunately more of a teaser because we are still in the pilot creation stage of our FlexHub. And so I wanted to just share some things that we're thinking about and give you some ideas of time frame and where this pilot location will be. So first off, this FlexHub is going to be federally operated co-working space. So converse to the IDIQ contract, this will be in federal space. The IDIQ contract is in private sector space. Like the last contract we were just talking about, this one also is available for all branches of the federal government. It is not yet available, but it will be coming soon, hoping in the spring of 2022 to offer this as a pilot location for agencies to come and experience. The great thing about our FlexHub concept is this solution can really start to tap into existing capacity of federal agency spaces with this minimal investment. So GSA and your agency may have discovered throughout the last nearly 2 years that you have the ability to shed your footprint over time in some capacity. So if you're able to free up some unneeded real estate, it's possible that we could create this into, in the future, a FlexHub site that could be shared among the federal government rather than occupied solely by one agency. So thinking about how that might apply to your own co-working site in the future is thinking about maybe your training center. If you've got an individual training center at your agency, but you're only using it a few times a quarter or a few times a year, maybe that training center or a space within your office could be set aside and turned into a FlexHub that could then, like I said, be shared across the federal government. So these are that long-term goals of thinking, if this is successful, how could we implement this on a larger scale? So first we have to test this out. So we're creating a pilot location. It's going to be in the GSA headquarters building in Washington, DC. So the location is 1800 F Street. Creating this pilot space, what's going to be similar to the Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ, where we're having an open office concept space. This one is shared among only federal agencies, federal contractors, and of course, since it is in the GSA headquarters building, it would be shared with GSA staff as well. Nice thing about a FlexHub location specific to this location at 1800 F Street is this is a federal building. So agencies would have the confidence knowing coming into the space that they're going through federal security screening and only working alongside federal employees. So there is a great collaboration effort that might be able to be achieved here with your agency co-locating and collaborating across the federal government. So perhaps your agency is part of a working group where you collaborate with other federal agencies, maybe quarterly or even more frequently. You've got some sort of federal working group. This FlexHub site could be an ideal location that is more neutral, that you could all go to, reserve that workspace or that conference room or collaboration area for the day or for the week, whatever you need to use to collaborate across federal agencies. This space, like the Flexible Coworking Services IDIQ contract that I have been speaking about, is fully furnished with wireless internet. So I'll talk a little bit more about that here on the next slide. So because this is an emerging service, I want to share that we don't have all the details now. I know there's probably going to be a lot of questions either today or in the future about how we're going to offer this space and how we're going to charge for the space. And I will say today, I don't know the answer for how we're charging for the space, but we are considering that and looking at lots of different options. So something that we're considering is, do we create a membership or subscription type of model? Maybe that subscription model would be based on anticipated use. So for example, maybe you know you need the space a few times a month, or maybe you want that subscription that offers you unlimited access. Additionally, looking to see if we would use an RWA from your agency, we could work with you to identify how many times your agency anticipates to use the FlexHub location. We would accept the RWA, and then we would draw down on that RWA for the per use basis. So whatever we go with, we want to make sure that it's the least painful on all sides. So we want to make sure there's the least number of paperwork, the least number of touch points, because we certainly want, if your agency is ready to use this FlexHub site, we don't want you to have to go through all sorts of processes just to be able to use the space for an hour, for a day. We want it to be really intuitive and streamlined. So I'll say, to make this happen, what we desperately need is a reservation software across the federal government that's accessible. So this reservation software could be used to, as you swipe into the location, you reserve a workstation, it starts to track your agency or your individual use of the space. And so that in itself might draw down on that RWA. So again, I don't know the answer on the payment. Working on that behind the scenes to get that up and running, but thinking about all sorts of options right now. I mentioned already that the space is fully furnished, and I wanted to touch on that just another minute here. So this space, what we're looking to do right now is put in innovative furniture and innovative IT solutions to make this space really vibrant and make it a space that your agency is excited and want to come to. We want to provide this unique experience where you can test out new furniture, new IT, new ways of working, and also at the same time, then give us feedback on how that space is working. So we can make modifications, we can listen to your feedback, and also that feedback can help inform your own agency if this is a concept that you could see applying across the federal government on a larger scale. So additionally, we would always over time want to make continuous improvements to this FlexHub site so that we can know if this is successful and something that we want to do and expand outside of just the DC market. So while our FlexHub pilot location is only going to be in DC, we'll use the feedback that we get from our end users. So your agencies, as you're using our space and giving us feedback, we'll be able to assess the demand for other FlexHub locations to determine if we can expand that outside of DC, and also if we can, where that most appropriate location or locations would be, so that we're not creating something too quickly. We want to certainly get feedback before we ramp up too quickly. In terms of timing on our FlexHub, we're looking to open that in the spring of 2022. And also, we certainly realize that not every agency is able to travel on site or be able to use the space in person. So we want to offer virtual tour options for anyone who's unable to travel. So that's all I've got on FlexHub. Cliff's Notes really quick is federally operated co-working space. We are looking at how we're going to charge for the space, but we don't have the answer yet. You would be occupying FlexHub location with only federal agencies and federal contractors. And we're looking for your feedback on this concept at our 1800 F Street pilot location, so we can determine if we're ready to expand and when that would be outside of DC. So with that, I wanna put my contact information up here on the screen for just a minute, and then I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and we'll take a look at what questions have come in. I hear there's some good ones.
Great, Jane, thank you so much. This is a superb idea, and I think we're getting a lot of excellent about how it is going to be received. So let's tee up a couple of those questions, and you take it from there. All right, your first question. Andrea or one of the team members, can you provide us with a question?
The first one up, Dave, that we received was from Florence, and she wants to know again, are the spaces, can you just confirm they're in federal buildings or commercial space? And I know this is a key point of which solution may be right for you.
Yes, so flexible co-working services, the IDIQ, most of the presentation today was talking about private sector co-working spaces in non-federal space. When we shift to talk about the pilot, which is not yet opened yet, we're talking about co-working in federal space.
And then a follow-up question on that, Jane. How long about does it take for GSA to award a contract once the RWA is received?
Yeah, okay, so great point. So once we receive the RWA, we do need to go through the RWA acceptance process. So once the RWA has been accepted, we anticipate a 5-week turnaround between that acceptance and getting people in the space. We are certainly looking for ability to streamline the effort over time as we get a bunch of task orders under our belt, but right now we're saying 5 weeks.
The next question that came in, Jane, two rather similar ones. Really, folks want to understand about the city tiers and kind of understanding the availability of space in maybe smaller markets. So where can they go to learn right now, sort of what cities end up in what tiers so they can have an idea of where they might find some coverage?
Excellent question. So we have, I guess I would say it's in our internal working documents, we have a list of all of the cities in City Tier 1, City Tier 2, and then any cities that are not listed in Tier 1 or 2 fall under City Tier 3, so capturing the rest of the US. I'm not sure that we've made that city tier information publicly available across the federal government. I will check in with our legal and our contracting officer to make sure that that's something that we can, put together in a PDF. And assuming that will be something as we follow up with the written responses to these, we'll include that if we are able to. But I will say we can offer co-working space across all city tiers. So it doesn't matter if we're talking New York versus Butte, Montana. There's a huge difference there, I understand, in co-working availability. But I will say in our smaller tier markets, I think that our co-working aggregator firms will have a better ability to provide co-working in smaller tiers.
Thanks, Jane. Another question that came up, sort of a repeating theme here. Folks want to understand what sort of precautions are being taken in co-working spaces with COVID and concerns about cleaning, vaccinations, mask wearing, all that. Can you tell us a little bit about how that will work?
Yep, totally understandable. We are dealing with times of COVID, and each of our vendors have certified that they're complying with executive orders. Additionally, you as an individual using co-working space would need to make sure you're following state, local, municipal guidelines to make sure that if you're required to wear a mask, that you are doing that, social distance, things like that, based on locality. In terms of cleaning and all of that, the co-working vendors are on top of it. And so I have high confidence that any sort of co-working space has been cleaned. A lot of our vendors are offering information on their websites about this. So again, high confidence that we are providing fully safe spaces and really making sure that we're aligning with COVID protocols that are required by the federal government.
Right. Here's a good question coming in. Before folks commit to a co-working situation, is there any way they could, test it out, take something for a trial run before their commitment?
Sure, kind of, yes. So I'll say that if your agency is interested in checking out a co-working site, maybe you've got something down the street that you want to take a look at, you are absolutely welcome to contact a co-working vendor and get a tour. Maybe they offer a virtual tour, maybe it's an on-site tour. there's a couple of things to note. One is GSA probably will not be coordinating that tour for you. I certainly want to make sure we're not promoting any one vendor over another. And so that would be kind of on your own agency to find a co-working vendor site that you wanted to tour. Knowing that we do fully compete each of these contracts. So even if you've got a WeWork site down the street and you love it, that does not mean that you would get to go into that WeWork site under that task order, because we certainly would be competing, getting the conformance to requirements and best price. Also looking at those small business needs. And then let's see, there was one other thing that's fleeting from my head, but I wanted to share. Oh, yes. So really important is that if you do have a tour from a co-working vendor, please be aware that we have thousands of access to co-working vendors across the country, and they are not all fully up to speed on the ins and outs of our contract. So you might get a tour from someone who tells you some things about the contract that aren't 100% accurate. So please take your tour with a grain of salt, take a look at what the space looks like. Certainly happy myself and our contracting team, we can have conversations with you about that contract to make sure you understand the ins and outs of it.
I think we have time for one more quick question. Again, this looks like a question that was asked by several folks. Could you just go over that GSA fee again, how about the pricing structure?
Yep, hopefully I'm not speaking incorrectly about RWA, and if so, I will certainly correct us in our FAQ written answers. So we do have an RWA fee that is included as we put together the independent government estimate includes the RWA fee. That RWA fee goes toward administrative cost to put that contract in place. And so it's not any sort of extra in dollars that we're kind of tacking on. There's no extra co-working type of fee. It is truly just the standard RWA fee that GSA would provide on any sort of project.
Okay, Jane, this was a really super session, and I think maybe it's time to wrap it up, but rest assured, folks, if we didn't get to your questions today, a lot of great questions still in the queue. I know that Jane and her team will be feverishly working on the formal written responses. So all questions asked today will receive a written response, and we'll post those answers on our Client Enrichment Series website at www.gsa.gov/CES. Jane, if you could maybe bring up the last slide in the deck and just share that, and then we'll say a few words about in closing. Dave will close us out with a little ad for what's coming up next on the Client Enrichment Series. And
totally. So sorry about that. I forgot I had
no
screens to share. There we go.
Excellent. Jane, thank you. And thanks for the subject matter experts backstage for this great presentation. And most of all, thank you for our clients who were able to join us as they appeared to be really, really engaged. We hope to see you back on the line again in future sessions. Our early winter lineup will include a December session on workplace design for the architects, space planners, and designers in our audience. We'll explore the dollars and cents of funding options for your workplace needs with our project liquidity discussion in January. And in February, we'll be back with one of the all-time favorites, e-Reader Digest, for all the clients who are involved with the financial and project management elements of reimbursable work authorizations. Stay tuned for invitations and registration details. As you all know, the goal of the Client Enrichment Series is to engage our audience in workplace topics that contribute to your mission success and to the effective management of your real estate and workplace programs. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your week. And from all of us on the Client Enrichment Series team, have a great Thanksgiving holiday.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everyone, so much.